I got the invitation to go on this Armed Lutheran radio show, though. You know this guy? Have you seen this? There's two things that I would like to say that make me feel safe. Number one, the fact that there is a radio show called the Armed Lutheran Podcast somewhere in the world. That makes me feel safe.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 422. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week. Welcome aboard to our new listeners, those of you who are joining us for the first time. I hope you enjoy what you hear. Hope you will come back and check out our future episodes. Check out our 421 previous episodes, and if you're so inclined, come and join the Reformation Gun Club and get access to a bunch of exclusive content that is only available for members of the Gun Club. Today, I want to give a shout out to Mitch from Stockbridge, Michigan, Ron from Lexington Park, Maryland, William from Bentonville, Arkansas, Guillaume from Osage Beach, Missouri, Michael from Janesville, Minnesota, Calroy from Boron, California, John from Wheaton, Illinois, Jim from Clarksville, Tennessee, Matthew from Nixa, Missouri, and our newest member, Nathan Cookson. Welcome aboard, and thank you to all the members of the Reformation Gun Club for all you do to make this show possible. Folks, if you would like to come and join these great folks and support the show, we are listener funded. We don't have any advertising. We don't have any sponsors. We rely on these good people and many more to help keep the lights on. If you would like to find out more, visit reformationgunclub.com or armedlutheran.us/gunclub, where you can look for a link in the menu bar at the top of the website, armedlutheran.us, and come and join us. We take donations through Give, Send, Go. Any amount that you provide is appreciated. If you donate $15, we'll send you some swag. If you donate $50, we'll send you a T-shirt. But we'll also invite you to our monthly online hangouts, the next of which will be in episode 423. And some of these names that I listed in our shout out today, William, Guillaume, Michael, those guys are regulars at our hangouts. So look forward to seeing you guys later this week. And hope you, for those of you who are not members, will consider joining and come join us for our next hangout. All right. What we're talking about today is sort of a follow-up on what we were talking about last week. Last week, I talked about how obvious it is to me that Democrats are losing in the upcoming elections, and they know it, because they're trying to convince you and me, gun owners, that they are gun people like us. They're pandering to gun owners for their votes, pandering to people that any other day of the week they would consider to be extremists and crazy people and, people who love guns more than children and all of that. Well, something hit the radar this week that follows up on what happened last week with Tim Walz going out and, posing as a gun rights guy. This week, we got another taste, only a little bit worse. In the great state of Missouri, there is a guy named Lucas Kuntz. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but that's how you ought to pronounce his name. Lucas Kuntz is running for Senate, trying to unseat Josh Hawley. Now, he's losing in the latest Emerson College poll by 10 points, with, I think it's 51-41 was the result of the poll, 7% undecided. So even if all the undecideds go and vote for Kuntz, Hawley is still winning. But Kuntz has apparently decided, just like Tim Walz did last week, that the way to close this gap, the way to bridge the gap with the average voter, is to pose as a gun rights guy. Now, you'll recall that Walz decided he was going to put on brand new hunting gear and drag a bunch of reporters out into the woods to go pheasant hunting, and hoping to prove somehow that he's just a regular guy like you and me. He's not a radical gun control Nazi. No, he's a hunter. He just wants common sense gun safety. Then he proceeded to make a fool of himself in front of those reporters by struggling to load his shotgun. Well, Lucas Kuntz has done something very similar, only worse. Kuntz is a former Marine, apparently. And as I pointed out last week, that is a misnomer. Once a Marine, always a Marine, so he is a Marine. He spent 13 years in active duty in the Marines, and I think he is a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Reserves currently. But as I pointed out last week, I think that fact should mean absolutely nothing to you as a voter. Just because someone served in the military doesn't make their voice or their opinion special when it comes to issues like guns. Now, when it comes to issues like veterans issues or war, military affairs, that kind of stuff, they have special insights that you and me don't. But when it comes to guns, simply saying you're a Marine, or that you were in the Army, or that you were in the Navy, or that you were on the police force, means absolutely nothing to us as voters. Just because they served in the military doesn't mean that they're special, that their opinion counts more in this case. In fact, if a former member of the military refers to his service while calling the civilian semi-automatic AR-15 a quote-unquote weapon of war, their opinion actually means less than nothing. You may remember back during the George Floyd riots of 2020, when a gang of BLM activists went marching through a gated suburban community outside St. Louis and were confronted by a couple of idiots who came out on the lawn with guns. This was Mark and Patricia McCloskey, and you'll recall that we talked about them at length. They decided, rather than to call the police, which at the time was probably wouldn't have done any good anyway, but rather than keep an eye on the crowd from the safety of their own home, they decided to step out onto the lawn, wave a tiny pistol and an AR-15 around, and to threaten the protesters. They became the subject of a good many memes, and with good reason. What they did was stupid. And if you think otherwise, you're welcome to that opinion, but you're wrong. Part of responsible gun rights advocacy is calling out the dim bulbs who are among us, even the not so dim bulbs who make mistakes, even the good intentioned, good people who make mistakes. We need to call them out. The McCloskeys, however, were very, very dim. Patricia has, in the photos, you will notice a very tiny gun, probably a .380, looks like a PPK or a Taurus. So it's low capacity, low power. And she's pointing it at the crowd with her finger on the trigger. Mark, at least, did keep his booger picker off the bang switch for his, he's carrying an AR-15, but he's still busily flagging everybody, including his own wife. And at one point, he can be seen on the porch. There's a photo of him in the background on the porch in an elevated position with lots of landscaping and a wall between him and his wife as his wife advances towards the protesters in their yard. She's crossing their yard with the gun pointed directly at a protester and her finger on the trigger the whole time. And Mark is so far away with those obstructions in between that there's no way that he could possibly be of assistance to her if she got into trouble. And thank God she did not. Now, before you say anything, did the protesters have the right to be there? Absolutely not. Did they attack the McCloskeys? Also, no. Should they have been prosecuted? Yes, in both counts. Yes, the McCloskeys were reckless, and the protesters should have been charged with trespassing. The fact is, the McCloskeys were prosecuted, and the protesters were not. But that's beside the point. The point is that they were reckless, and they were wrong. And they were mercilessly mocked from all sides. But, and this is where I have a problem, some on the pro-gun right tried to paint them as heroes, which they were not. And Mark McCloskey eventually took this fame, if you want to call it that, and tried to turn it into a run for office. And I don't think Lucas Kuntz was running against him. I don't believe that was the case. Maybe he was. I know he was opposed, obviously, to McCloskey running for office. Whatever the case was, Lucas Kuntz posted a video, may have been on TikTok, I'm not sure. You'll have to go search for it. I think it was YouTube, where he mocked McCloskey and talking about the weapons of war that he, Lucas Kuntz, supposedly used during his service as a Marine. He posed with an AR-15, and he mockingly offered to give Mark McCloskey what he called a Marine veteran-led course in gun safety. Well. Fast forward to 2024, and keep that last little bit, the part about gun safety, in mind. Remember, Lucas Kuntz is losing in the polls, and he's losing badly. He's down double digits. And like I said last week, during last week's episode, what do Democrats do when they start to lose? They either run to the base, which is what Kamala Harris is doing right now, or they try to pander to the very people that they always, under normal circumstances, would be demonizing. They try to make themselves seem like normal people, gun owners. They try to convince you that they are just like you and me. They're not radicals. They're not gun banners. They're just like, they support the Second Amendment just like you. So to prove this point, or to try to make this point, Lucas Kuntz decided to bring a reporter to a shooting range to join him and some of his supporters, and you may remember this guy, Republican turncoat Adam Kinzinger, he of the January 6th Commission. They decided to get together for a fun promotional event, an afternoon of shooting at a range, just to show how pro 2A they really are, and how much like you and me they really are. Just guys who love guns and shooting guns, and how they don't want to take away your guns because they love guns and you should totally vote for them. Well, what happened was an exercise in karma that unfortunately nearly ended in tragedy. The range, which was supposedly set up by an NRA certified safety officer, which should tell you something, featured rusty steel targets that Kuntz and his pal Kinzinger were filmed and photographed shooting at with an AR-15. Now, shooting steel targets with an AR-15 is not necessarily bad. It can be done. It's done quite often. But not when the steel targets are barely far enough away from the line to be safe with a pistol caliber. If you see the footage, any of the photos of this event, never mind the ridiculous way that Adam Kinzinger is holding the AR-15, the targets are maybe 10 yards away, maybe 15. That might be pushing it. So we're talking maybe 30 feet shooting with an AR-15 at steel targets. The minimum distance I would ever consider safe for shooting an AR-15 at steel targets is 50 yards. And it's still possible that you'll have splatter from the bullet come back and hit you. To top this all off, Mr. Gun Safety Marine guy allowed Adam Kinzinger to shoot, there's a photo of this, with no eye protection. He's shooting a steel target with an AR-15 from maybe 10 yards away with the iPro on top of his head. Now, to be fair, Kinzinger probably removed the iPro and scooted them up onto his head because he was trying to see through what looks at least like a 6-power scope. It's a huge scope for an AR-15, especially for one shooting at that distance. So basically, Adam Kinzinger is shooting at targets 10 yards away with a scope that magnifies probably 5 or 6 times. 5 or 6 power scope, meaning he could see the hairs on a gnat's balls at that distance. And predictably, a ricochet came back off the steel and hit the reporter that they brought out to film this and take pictures at this whole event. And there are photos of them having to provide him with first aid. And it's not just, now I've been hit by splash from a steel target. It's not uncommon. But this hit the reporter badly enough that he was, I can't tell exactly how badly he was hurt. They tried to play it off as, oh, well, it's okay. This happens all the time. And this is why you should be prepared with a medical kit, a first aid kit. Well, the guy was bleeding enough to have soaked the rolled up cuff of his dress shirt with blood. Now, the supposedly NRA certified range officer guy, the one who set this whole event up, a guy by the name of Chad Everett, says he told them where to stand, but they did not listen. I have a hard time believing this because the tables where they have all the stuff laid out in front of them is where they were shooting from. And that was 10 yards away. So either he told them something different and they ignored him and set it up closer, or he just is an idiot. Either way, his point is, he posted a response to this, which was that, yep, getting hit by fragments off of steel, it happens all the time, blah, blah, blah. It's a massive cop-out. As someone pointed out, it's his range. It should be his rules. He let them shoot from that distance, and cunts should have known better. So they're all a bunch of dumbasses. You're shooting an AR-15 at 10 yards, using a massive scope. You're not wearing eye protection. You're shooting steel targets, and you supposedly ignore the advice of the guy who is supposedly a certified range officer. They're all dumbasses. Yep. It's not uncommon. Like I said, it is not uncommon to get hit by fragments. I have been hit by fragments before. If you shoot steel, it happens. And yeah, they can hurt. But knowing that, as he points out as this safety officer points out in his social media account, knowing that he still allowed these morons to shoot a rifle at a steel target 10 yards away with no iPro. without stepping in and saying, no, this shouldn't happen. And gun safety Marine guy, Lucas Kuntz, didn't either. He just stood there grinning while they took pictures. Remember, this is the same guy who smarmily offered Mark McCloskey a gun safety course. Lucas Kuntz was a judge advocate in the Marines. So basically, he was a military lawyer. He worked in the Pentagon as well as an arms control negotiator. So he's not exactly Mr. high-speed, low-drag, kick-indoors guy that he tries to make himself out to be. He's basically Tim Walz, but better looking, younger, and more fit. That's it. When he holds an AR-15, he doesn't look like a goofball doing it. But when he stands by and allows a friend to shoot an AR-15 at a steel plate from 30 feet, he proves he's worse than Tim Walz. He has proven, Lucas Kuntz has proven again, that gun-banning Democrats think you are stupid. They hate you 360 days out of the year, but when the election gets close, they want you to think that they are one of us. And they think that if they post photos of themselves with guns, that it will prove to us that they are one of us, that they are a gun guy. And sadly, a reporter had to get hurt to show the world what a lie this is. Now, it proves another point that I wanted to bring up here. Not just that Democrats think you're stupid and that they will do this stuff to pander to you whenever the election gets close. They'll try to pretend they're gun guys after demonizing you the rest of their term. But, and to all my friends who are veterans and police officers, please don't take any of the rest of this personally. I think you're going to understand what I mean. Lucas Kuntz has proved here that just because you served in the military doesn't mean you know squat about guns or gun safety. Just because you have on your CV, your resume that you served in the military, it doesn't make you an expert on guns. In the same way that being a cop doesn't make you an expert. As we have pointed out on the show many times, most cops never shoot their guns except when they qualify once a year. And unless you're a frontline guy or spec ops, most military guys don't get and gals don't get a lot of time behind a rifle. The best military, veteran, or police shooters that I have ever seen or met are great shooters because they spend their own time and money to train and become proficient. Your service in the military, your time on the police force by itself is similar to taking a class to get your concealed carry permit and then thinking you don't need any more training. You're good to go. But it's not that simple. So the second point, that's the second point here. So what I want to come out of this with is a bit of advice, which is when you see training courses offered by people that you've never really heard of, some local guy at a local gun club who offers training courses, and their qualifications up top are I was in the Marines, or I was a U.S. Army veteran, or I served in the Navy, or I'm a former police officer, that's not good enough. You need to find out more about what they really know. If all they really know is what they learned in the military and what they learned in the police force, that may not be very good. That by itself is not enough. You need to find out more about that instructor. What do they know? Who did they learn from? What classes have they taken? What lengths have they gone to improve and to be qualified to teach? Simply putting the tag veteran or police officer putting that experience on their resume, on the business card, it's not enough. Some of the best instructors in the world never served in the military or in the police. Now, I'm not saying this to denigrate those who have. My point is simply saying, well, I know how to shoot a gun because I was in the Corps, or I served on the police force for 20 years. That's not enough. Barney Fife was a police officer. Gomer Pyle served in the military. Would you learn from somebody like that? I mean, I know those are fictional examples, but you get my point. Guys like Tim Walz and Lucas Kuntz are the Barney Fifes of the gun world. But they're worse than that. They not only believe by dint of their service that they're qualified to preach to you about guns, they also believe that they're the only ones qualified to use them and to own them, and that you, the common man, should not be allowed to own, quote unquote, a weapon of war. And the fact that Lucas Kuntz and Tim Walz use the term weapon of war is proof that they never really used one in war. And just as you should avoid taking a training class from one of them, you should not trust them to protect your God-given rights. All right, that is my rant for today. If you have any comments or any questions, please visit the feedback page, armedlutheran.us/feedback. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Be sure to, if you are interested in becoming a member of the Reformation Gun Club, or if you're interested in joining us for our online hangouts, go sign up for the Reformation Gun Club. We are going to be getting together this week, and that is going to be our pre-election get-together. And that will be aired on Sunday for episode 423. And then 424 is going to be a midweek show next week where we, with any luck, I'm going to try to do a live show next week with the cast to talk about the election and watch the election results as they roll in next Tuesday. So hopefully we can do that. Look for more details about that in the days to come. Again, thank you all for listening and putting up with another of my rants. Until we get together again for episode 423, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback, or a review on iTunes, and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.